Anderson Cooper, AC 360, CNN weeknights 10 Eastern.
Making progress in the Gulf, that is what retired Coast Guard Admiral Thad Allen said today. He's hopeful the operation to kill off the BP well could begin before Monday. Allen also said surveillance taken this week shows that it's becoming harder and harder to find oil. He says the oil is more dispersed and his team is finding less and less of it. That leads us to the question, was this disaster overblown by the president, the public, by public officials, by scientists, and the media, including myself? A new Time magazine article quotes a number of scientists who say the spill is not the environmental catastrophe many thought it would be. A number of those quoted in the article are on BP's payroll, but they raise a number of valid points. For instance, the oil has not penetrated into the wetlands as deeply as many feared, and the actual number of dead animals has been much smaller than was seen in the Valdez oil spill, which was and is more confined in a more confined space and a different temperature of water and involved heavier oil. So was this never as bad as we were led to believe, or did the skimming efforts and the dispersants and Mother Nature work better than some had feared? Ed Overton is Professor Emeritus in the Department of Environmental Sciences at LSU. He joins me now. Professor, was this overblown?
Well, I don't know. I didn't certainly overblow it. People that have been around an oil spill for a long time, I don't think overblowed it. There was plenty of damage, plenty of damage. We won't know the total carnage for several years. This is part of the Natural Resources Damage Assessment effort. Also, there'll be independent, scientifically based programs that'll try to understand and completely catalog the damage. So there was plenty of damage done. I don't think we should underestimate that. It's just that some people over-speculated, let me put it like that, that the Gulf would die, things like this, and that's just not in line with what normally occurs in an oil spill.
Well, I think it was the president who called it the worst environmental, or potentially the worst environmental disaster to hit the United States. Was that true, or do we not know, or did it look like that at the time?
Well, we don't know still, but the early evidence certainly doesn't indicate that it's going to have traumatic, draconian, long-term damaging effects. So I think that's probably a stronger statement than I personally would have used, but I don't want to underestimate the severity of the damage. I mean, most of the damage, remember, is not what we can see. We saw the dead pelicans and the dolphin and the other sea life and the birds, but there was a lot of damage that nobody ever saw, and we won't know how severe that was for several years to come.
A lot of the credit for the cleanup, you say, goes to Mother Nature. A lot of it was evaporated by the sun, broken up by waves, eaten up by bacteria. Did the huge amount of dispersants actually work?
Oh, absolutely. I think, if anything, the early evidence is that the use of those dispersants saved the shoreline, and that was clearly a good decision. I and a lot of other people were fairly skeptical at the time. There was so much dispersants used, but boy, the use of all that dispersant sure does look like a good idea right now.
So do we know if in fact this hasn't had the impact that was feared early on? I mean, will there be a way to judge whether it would have had that impact if it wasn't for the dispersants and if it wasn't for the all the response efforts, or will we never know?
Well, we'll truly never know, but clearly, right now, out of 7,000 plus miles in Louisiana, only 200 to 300 miles of coastal marshlands have really been hit. I just can't imagine that wouldn't have been 1,000 or more miles had that oil not been removed from the surface and left to come ashore. So clearly, in hindsight, use of dispersants, offshore skimming, in situ burning offshore, that helped save the coastline. Now, there's trade-offs. Remember, there's damage to the offshore marine species, both at the surface and at subsurface.
And obviously, the trains are still running, which is certainly a good thing, because we can hear the train behind you. I do want to point out, we got a picture today from Plaquemines Parish officials which show oil still on the surface in Barataria Bay. Their point being that there is still oil on the surface, and I think they're annoyed. They worry the Coast Guard is going to be pulling out too quickly. Do we know underwater what's happening? I mean, there was all that talk of those plumes and oil being under the water. Is that still there? Is that going to just dissipate harmlessly, or is that going to affect the food chain?
Well, we certainly hope it'll dissipate, and my projection is that it will dissipate. I mean, the plumes, the underwater plumes are dilute concentrations down in the part per million levels of dispersed oil. Now, the more it diluted is, the less damage it'll occur, and it's starting to be degraded by the bacteria as well as being dispersed by the ocean current. So I don't anticipate that there's going to be massive damage. You know, the damage is both toxicological and the reduction in the oxygen content of the water column. And there's not a lot of evidence so far that that's happening. I think there's a lot of research vessels out there looking for damage. I haven't seen any evidence so far to indicate that we got a big problem.